Hello there Pixel Pushers, it's Sadiq Hussain here with another Affinity photo tutorial. As you remember from the last video, we're on the cranes, trains and automobiles three-part series, and we're on part 2, which is trains, as you can see here. And we're going to take this image taken very quickly with a mobile phone on a local railway platform on the way into Birmingham, and just to show what creatively we can do with just a simple photograph. Several different ways of treating it, of course, and we're going to take this one and make it into that. So a little bit of motion blur added to it. There is some motion blur already here, as you can see, but not so much there. So add some motion blur, add a title, darken the surroundings, so it's basically a train in limbo on its own, coming out as if out of nowhere, and a border as well to give it extra contrast to the darkness. So let's kick off and let's go through techniques, looking at the tools, looking at different methodology to get from that to that. Okay, so let's start from scratch then. So first of all, we're going to do is to put on an adjustment layer, because we want to get rid of a lot of this light areas. So if we add an adjustment layer, and there's obviously, you can do levels, you can do curves, but let's do levels. And really we want to make the blacks blacker. Now don't worry about the train itself, because as it's a mask, we can block out the effect on the train, and we can really darken it down if we wish to about there, and that's sufficient. We don't need to do anything else. Now that we've darkened it down, if you go back to the layers palette, and we can see we've got a levels and adjustment on it, and as you know from previous videos, this comes automatically with a mask, so that we can block out the effect by using a black brush. So don't forget, black blocks, white reveals. So black paintbrush blocks the effect, and the effect here is the levels adjustment, and white would reveal it. So if we click on the paintbrush tool on the left hand side, we automatically get the black brush loaded. Just make sure that the opacity isn't too low, because we just want to do it in a couple of strokes. Okay, you don't want it to be 100%, because you might get a hard edge to it, and flow about 50-60% is fine. Hardness, you want it to be fairly soft, so you don't want the brush to have and I'm just going to use the square bracket keys to increase the size of the brush for now. And literally all we're doing is we are painting out the effect of the levels adjustment on part of the train where we don't want it to be that dark. Okay, do it sort of roughly first, you know, roughly where the train's going. Okay, and as we recede further away, we'll reduce the size of the brush so it fits in. We can zoom in as well in a moment of the edge of the train, like that, because really we want to see the train light, and we want the outside areas to be dark, including the platform, and we'll sort that out in a moment. And if you're not too sure which bits you've done and which bits you haven't, then just turn that adjustment layer off and on, so you can see where you might need to do a little bit more. So here we're doing this by eye. Okay, it's dark down here at the bottom anyway. You'll see that if we turn that off, that's dark anyway. And I think that's pretty much done. We've got the brightness back to its original level for the train itself. And where it was dark already, of course, it's going to stay dark. That's fine. Okay, I think we're done there. So that's done. Now what we need to do is to select that original image layer, the background layer, not the adjustment layer. And what we're going to do now is to increase the size of the brush, but this time change it to the in-painting brush. Now the in-painting brush, as you know, is fantastically powerful, and it allows us to basically paint out the light pixels and replace it with dark pixels, because the majority of the area that we're painting on is made up of dark pixels. Now sometimes it doesn't quite get it right there, it's actually selecting from up here. So what we'll need to do, we'll just try a different tab. Let's do what we can first. Okay, there we go, that's working okay. And when it works, get that done first. Okay, and I'm actually going to get rid of that as well. There we go. And then down here. Okay, so it's now repeating that there, but that's all right. We can experiment. Just do a little bit at a time, and then as we get rid of some, that gives us more black to play with. Now we could of course just paint over with a black brush, but I want to demonstrate this brush in painting, which I find very powerful. So just reduce the size of the brush and do small sections at a time, and that really helps. Okay, nearly there. We could do that up there as well. Don't think that's a reflected light off the train itself. So, and of course if you made a mistake, you can just swap the color of the brush to white and paint it back in again. Remember, black blocks, white reveals the effect. Okay, so we'll just go down to here, and we'll do that a little bit at a time. Okay, so we can just do a little bit at a time. And this is good practice for anybody using the in-painting brush tool. And essentially how it works is that it samples where you paint the section that you paint over, and it samples the pixels, and the majority of the pixels in that area override the minority pixels. So if the majority are black, it will write over the color pixels in this case. And as you go down, you can increase the size of the brush if you want to, because now you've got far more black all the way around, and it would actually do a better job. So the key thing to take away here with the in-painting brush tool is to always vary the size of the brush. Try it, see how it works, reduce the size of the brush, and try that. So now I would actually venture and try and replace all of it with a large size brush and see how that works. There we go, done. That's good. Okay, I'm happy with the removal of the unwanted pixels. So we're done there, and what we now want to do is to put a motion blur on it, and we can do it a couple of ways, but we haven't used filters very often, so let's go up to filters, blur, and then down to motion blur, because it's a train moving. So we'll do rate and motion blur. Now if the train was at an extreme angle, we might need to change the angle of the blur, but actually it's almost horizontal, so don't think we need to change that much. We'll leave that where it is, and let's just blur it. If we were to blur it completely, you might say, well, actually it's a bit too much, so just bring it back a little bit. We'll leave it there. Click apply. So we've blurred it. And remember, it's the background we're blurring, not the adjustment layer. Okay, because that's all around here and that's no good to us. I haven't combined those two layers at this stage because I want you to see that they are still two separate layers, and of course I could still tweak that layer should I want to make any adjustments to the brightness of the train as opposed to the blackness of the surroundings. Now that we've done that, let's put a border around it. So we go to the effects and go to outline. We've done this before on a number of other videos, so no surprise there. We don't want the border to be black, we want it to show contrast. Let's go for white. We want it on the inside of the canvas and turn it right up. I want the border to be quite large because I want to put a key line in the middle, but also I want to make the border come right up to the edge of the light area there. So if it goes right up to the end of the scale there on that slider, you think, well, that's all we can do. You can actually put any figure in there. So if you just highlight the box and put in the number of pixels and press enter, that'll do it. And that's just about coming to the edge of it, and I'm happy with that. So click close. Now to put a key line, it's a little bit counterintuitive of how to do that, but essentially you're drawing with a rectangle. So roughly position it where you want it, and don't worry about the fact that the rectangle is white, filled with white at this stage. We've got the rectangle tool selected, or the shape tool, but we've chosen rectangle, of course. And the fill, we don't want any fill at all, so we just turn the opacity right the way down to 0. So it's now translucent, it's transparent. So there's no fill, but we do want a line around it. So normally it would be on no line, but we want to have line. So select that and obviously choose the thickness of the line that suits what you want to produce. I used 10 last time. Let's just say 13 pixel point wide now. And you can click on the move tool. And because you're, go back to the layers, because you're on the shape, the rectangle shape layer, when you move it, that's all that will move. And you can use those guides that you get when you've got the snapping tool enabled at the top here, these three here. Make sure those are enabled, which I tend to keep them all the time enabled. And now I can just position it where I want to in the center, and that's that done. Okay, we'll finish off with a title. So go to the text tool and just roughly position it where you want to. Type it in, out of nowhere. Okay. We want it to be white, but if it wasn't white, if it was black, you just change the color of the text there. Okay, so you can do that. And we'll change the font. So what font do we want? Let's just select it first. Select it all first. And then what font do we want? Yeah, let's go for that one. And then go to the move tool. We can not only change the size of the text, but we can move it to where, and just center it. You get the guideline of snap in place, the green. Position it where you want to. And that's done. So we've gone from, and we've actually replicated that there almost. Okay, slightly different, bit more blur. The text is a bit different size, but that's what we've done. We've taken, just roll that back, that image to that image. Now, the end result isn't important in this case. It's really about learning the tools and applying them and being creative and getting the practice and getting your head around what Affinity Photo can do. And then, of course, once we'd want to save that, we'd go to File and Export, save it as a JPEG if that's what you want, what resolution you want, what quality you want, and give it a name, and that's it. Okay, well, I hope you found that useful, and do give us a thumbs up, but also leave some feedback. All the feedback is really important. Any areas you want me to cover, and of course, if you're here and you've liked this and you've liked my other videos and you want to see more, then really the best way to get notifications for absolutely no cost on your part is to subscribe. So please help the channel and subscribe. And if you don't like it, if further down the line you find that you want to unsubscribe, of course you're welcome to do that. But I think you'll find we'll be doing lots and lots of videos in the coming weeks and months that you'll want to stay tuned and look at what's coming up next. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.